Hey there, friends. This is Bill MacDonald, the English and Spanish language arts reading and write prescription doctor. I want to help you with the editing question that most students miss because many teachers don't even realize it's part of the editing portion of the test. And it has to do with what I call the second S of CUPPSS, called sentence boundaries. When a sentence is supposed to stop once it's got a subject and a predicate, and when it should keep going because it doesn't have the subject and the predicate. So if if a paper if a sentence has a run on, it means that there are too many words without a period. If it has a fragment, it means there's too few words without a period, meaning that the student or the editing passage has a subject, and before they get to the predicate, there's a period or an exclamation or a question mark, or there's a predicate without a subject. So it's important that you learn this because whenever the keywords in the question, and I have my key necklace on still, whenever it says what change, that's cups, capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling. When it says what is the correct or best way to write a sentence, that's Roth. That sentence singular is either a run-on or a fragment, which is the one we're going to look at now. And finally, whenever it says what is the correct way to write sentences, plural, that's what's known as a SAF or a FAS, that the first sentence is a complete thought, and the second sentence is a fragment, SAF, or vice versa, that the first sentence is a fragment missing the subject or the predicate, and the second sentence is a complete thought. So make sure that this coming year, all of you editing teachers from third all the way to 10th grade, practice cups with two S's, not one, so you can practice the keyword phrase correct or best. That way, your students will know how to recognize they have a sentence boundary issue coming up when they see one of those. The one we're going to look at today was on the 10th grade test for this spring. It was question number 18 from the same patches that we've been going over today. And again, we do the rules, and we're only going to look at sentence 28. So R stands for read it softly or loudly, the question and the sentence in the passage, underline in both places, label, meaning mark the test, whatever way that the teacher has taught in both the question and the passage, start to eliminate three wrong answers and explain why they're incorrect, and if possible, extend or give some examples of those wrong answers, or extend with the one you select in the book and the Scantron or the submission on the computer. So this is the question that many times in Texas gets anywhere from 30 something to 50 something percent correct because we're not practicing it enough. In fact, I felt it was so important. One of my entire passages in the binder is nothing but practicing questions with the keywords correct or best with both sentence and sentences. So whenever you see the word correct, have your kids underline it. They'll label with a bracket or highlighting the sentence they're supposed to look at, and that reminds them that I'm going to go to the passage and I'm going to label sentence 28, question 18, and highlight sentence 28. And because it says sentence singular, that means it's a ROF. That means the mistake is almost always going to either be a run on where there's not enough punctuation, or it's a fragment, a sentence without a complete thought. If it said the word sentences 28 and 29, or sentences 27 and 28, immediately your students would just have to understand that that's a SAF. Sentences means plural, more than one, that the first one is a sentence and the second one is the fragment. Or if you flip it, that the first sentence that they show them is the fragment and the second one is a complete thought. And so you would have your kids bracket both sentences and find out which one is true. Okay? When you look at the answer choices, you can see that there's nothing that says no change or no mistake. That means there's something wrong with the sentence. And when I went to go look at it, I told you that you can always count on it when it says correct and sentence, either a run-on or a fragment. So let's take a look at it. I'll put my glasses on to make sure that I can see what I'm talking about and be able to help you better. It's question sentence number 28. So there it is. It's the last sentence on the whole passage. So if you have your kids read the entire passage, by the time they get to this one, they might be so emotionally and physically and mentally exhausted, they won't even have the energy. But if you only have your kids read the questions, the sentences that the questions are about, it's going to save them a lot of hassle. So it's very important that every time you have correct or best, go ahead and circle all of the commas, colons, semicolons in the sentence and verbalize them, or do something kinesthetic, or both. So here we go. Capital, best of all, that's an introductory phrase, comma. They, whoever they is, the previous sentence, will be using the same system as 95% of the world. My brain made me pause. So that comma right there should not be a slowing down sign. It should have been a stop sign. So I drew an imaginary a wall right there to say, okay, I know that this is a run-on. In turn, it will contribute to the safety, comma, facilitate trade, comma, and improve international communication. So we have three things on a list there. So commas in a series can work this way. You have the first thing, contribute to safety, comma, see where my hand's going down, facilitate trade, comma, and improve communication. Now, they're never going to test that last comma. Let me go ahead and come out of the screen for a second. They're never going to test that last comma. So keep in mind what we have here. It said the first thing, comma, the second thing can be a comma, but that's called the Oxford comma. And so because some programs teach to put the comma before the last thing on the list, and some just say you can use the word and, then let your kids, you might want to decide whether to teach it or whether to not, and just be consistent about it. But the state will always test this comma, but never the last one in a series, because of the Oxford comma rule being different from one program to the next. So getting back to our choices, we can see that it's a run-on. So we're going to go ahead and look at the four choices and find out why would we eliminate three answers and select one. Now, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine that I showed you guys in an earlier video. Sometimes we need something kinesthetic, something visual to remember some of the reasons for eliminating a wrong answer. My friend's name here in this little picture is Mrs. PVC. PVC is a little pipe that you can buy that's in the shape of a cylinder. So all of these letters stand for something. So what we're going to do in both editing and revising is Anything that changes the meaning that was intended, we're going to eliminate it. If we find a run-on or too much repetition, comparatively speaking to the other choices, we're going to eliminate it. If the subject S is missing, that's called a fragment, so we would eliminate that choice. If the predicate P is missing, it would also be called a fragment, so we eliminate it. If the answer that is there is too vague, if it's not specific enough, we're going to eliminate it. Or if whatever we wrote changes the content that the paragraph or the sentence was about, then we would eliminate it. And so I noticed that using Mrs. PVC, we're going to be able to eliminate 3 answers here. So let's take a look at the 3 that are incorrect and the one that's correct here and find out why. Capital, best of all, comma, and it won't kill your kids to say comma or to bounce an imaginary ball. They will be using the same system as 95% of the rest of the world, comma. In turn, we already said that that's a run-on, so you can't trade a run-on for another run-on. So I would suggest that you teach your kids to eliminate on the right side first before you eliminate it on the left side where the letter is. So I'm not going to go on because I already know that we had a run-on if it's a comma with the word in. G is the correct answer. Let's read it loudly and find out why. Capital, best of all, introductory phrase. They, whoever they is the subject, is replacing, that pronoun is replacing whoever they were talking about in the sentence before, will be using the same system as 95% of the rest of the world. And you see there that, I'm sorry, this is the wrong answer. In turn, contributes to safety, comma, facilitate trade, comma, and improve international communication. Because that second part has no subject and it's still a run-on because of the comma that's there, we can't pick that answer. Letter H is the one that's correct, and so they use what we call a non-restrictive phrase to write the sentence where a comma is needed to separate the non-restrictive phrase from the rest of the sentence. Capital, best of all, comma, they will be using the same system as 95% of the world, comma, which is talking about the system, and so it's giving you information about what you just finished talking about, and so comma, which is often used to teach non-restrictive phrases. In turn, will contribute to safety, comma, facilitate trade, comma, and improve international communication. So apparently, students did not know how to use commas followed by the word which told something more about whatever was in the first part of the sentence. Let's find out why J is incorrect. Capital, best of all, comma, they will be using the same system as 95% of the rest of the world, period. Capital, in turn, they forgot to say who will be doing this. So again, we have no subject. It's 2 complete sentences, but because there's no subject, the second one is a fragment because it is missing the subject. And like I mentioned, if anything is missing the subject or the predicate, it's a fragment and we would eliminate it. So our best answer is letter H. So because it only got 49% correct in Texas, and because of the word correct and sentence, I suggest that you practice lots of run-ons and fragments, and practice also having an independent thought followed by a comma with the word which that explains a little bit more about the first part of the sentence. So I hope that that's helpful. Keep in mind, look for keywords, whether it says change where you use cups, or it says correct or best with sentence, or correct or best with sentences, and make sure your kids get used to those keyword strands and know exactly how to label their passage so that uh, they'll have a better chance of getting the correct answer. And a key component to success is either verbalizing the punctuation or kinesthetically doing something to differentiate between commas that slow a sentence down and stopping punctuation, ending punctuation that stops the sentence. So uh, if you like the video, go ahead and click on like on my YouTube page. Subscribe if you're not already doing so. And I suggest that all teachers from 3rd through 10th grade share or teach this skill because it's the S that is not being taught enough or correctly, because every single year it's always the lowest performing question, uh, because most of the posters out there have cups with one S, capitalization, usage, punctuation, and spelling. So we've got to add that second S for sentence boundaries. And because when you write an essay, the editing has to be somewhat legible. It can't be I indecipherable or I illegible, or else the penmanship could be so bad that they can't understand. And so when we get to short answer, open-ended, extended, or essay responses, the essay has to be legible, because part of the grade of the answer, if they can't understand your answer or where you're proving your answer, then you have to get a 0 because of the person's inability to read it. Thank you guys. God bless and have